have you ever read, I don't know, do you know Paul Graham, by the way?
I do. Not like
Have,
we're not best buddies or anything, but I do know of him. I've met him. Yeah,
so he
He's from
has
Boston, right? Or Cambridge?
Cambridge. Yep.
Yeah. So you guys know one another.
He wrote a blog post back in 2008. It was October 2008. So this is like right after the crash. And it's just, if you go to paulgraham.com/bad economy, is the name of the blog post. And he makes this case where he goes, the economic situation is apparently so grim that some experts fear we may be in for a stretch as bad as the mid-70s, which is when Microsoft and Apple were founded. And as those examples suggest, like a recession may not be such a bad time to start a startup, but which you've heard before, but I thought there's one interesting part where he goes, I'm not saying it's a good time either. The truth is more boring. The economy doesn't matter much either way for a founder starting a startup. And I actually thought that was a really good point, because I hear this so much. It's like, I'll talk to kind of young founders and they listen to Twitter and they listen to podcasts and they listen to kind of these, like, a lot of it's like, VCs who are, also pandemic experts and also, macroeconomists as well. And so they hear, and then they sort of start to adjust their plans and their mental models and like their room for everything. And it's like, dude, if you're a startup, you're like an ant in this world. Does the ant care what's going on with the presidential election? No, like you basically just need to build a product. You need to carry your little piece of dirt. It's like, build a product, get a customer, get 10 customers. Like, it doesn't matter if the economy is bad. If you can't get 10 customers, it's not going to work anyways. And so I thought it was a great little blog post talking about like kind of starting a startup during the downtime, which is where I think we're about to, or we just officially entered a recession again. So
Yep.
I was curious, Dharmesh, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So my position is I lean more towards kind of the Paul Graham end of the spectrum, which is I think it's either neutral, that it doesn't matter. It's one of the things you're suggesting, towards positive. And the positive elements of being in a kind of downturning economy or recession is that things become available that would not have been available to a startup before, like talent. It's like, oh, well, there are people sitting at Meta, Facebook, or sitting at Google right now that may be reevaluating their lives, or they may have just been let go from a venture-backed company that raised $200+ million, right? So now you've got this talent that's coming on the market that might not have come on the market before. Things that were super expensive, like buying Google AdWords or certain marketing channels, because you have this glut of money and a glut of venture capital. I think of venture capital as a very efficient machine of turning like money from LPs into Google AdWords revenue, right? That's they're just a conduit between the two. And as in a downward economy, you're going to get less of that kind of glut of money flowing in, which drives the cost overall down for certain things that I think are important to entrepreneurs. So I'm generally net positive that a down economy is actually a relatively good time to start a startup.
For like the last 18 months or, whenever, like the last 24 months, when everything's been booming, my wife works at Airbnb and, I've got a lot of friends that work at obviously HubSpot and all these, and Sean was at Twitch. So we have like some perspective on the salaries of big companies. And I've seen some of these salaries and they are crazy. As like a leader and the biggest shareholder of HubSpot, and you like see these numbers, are you thinking to yourself like this, like we can't afford to pay someone like an entry level person $250,000 a year? I don't know how this is going to work. Like what's your perspective on that when these salaries are going so high and now it's like a little bit more normal?
Yeah, but as a startup, I mean, you can't afford those salaries anyway, right? Unless you're one of those kind of rare exceptions that has $50+ million going out of the gate, which is very, very rare. And so, one of the things a founder has to kind of get good at, it's convincing really smart people to do this irrational thing, which is join you in your startup, right? And if you can't do that, if you can't make that sale, which is the most important sale you'll make, is being able to kind of attract people and then it's customers, it's not going to work. So you have to do two things: either recognize kind of superstar talent and give them something they can't get because it's beyond competence. It's like, oh, you'll learn more here. Oh, you're going to do your own startup someday. This is the place to get your startup MBA because you'll be exposed to a bunch of things. You'll meet your future co-founder of the company, those kinds of things. Either you have to do that, or you have to say, I'm going to be really good at identifying diamonds in the rough, people that have not made it to the $200+, $300,000+ salary yet, but they will someday. I caught them early in their kind of evolution, and so I can get them. So it has to be one or the other form of arbitrage. Otherwise, you can't play the game. That's just not. I don't think it's viable.
I'm doing when you're saying that, it's like resonating so much because it's basically all the three things we just talked about. I'm doing. It's like I started the Milk Road in January this year, and so it's about to be 6 months, or it's been 6 months, and it's like, here, let me start a crypto company right when crypto crashes, like 70, 80%. And at the beginning, Ben, even my co-founder, Ben, he was like, the only thing I can see going wrong is if crypto goes in a bear market. I go, well, crypto's going to go into a bear market. Like that's like one of the few certainties of crypto is that it goes up and down. And when it does, it is dramatic in all both ways. The elevator is dramatic in both ways. And I was like, so it's just a question of like, do you think that kills it, or do we just make it through? Like that's really all we have to think about here. So that was the first part of like starting in a bad economy. The second one on talent was I recently hired this guy, and he quit a pretty well-known venture-backed company that I think had just raised maybe $50 or $100 million. And he joined, and I had talked to him a little bit before he joined. Like he was thinking about doing his own startup. We had traded a couple emails, nothing serious. Just he was wanting me to use his product. Then he took a job at this place. All right, whatever. I forgot about him. Then he emails me, and I shared this on Twitter. He emails me, subject line, "I have made an irreversible decision." And I was like, okay, I got to click this. What's inside? And he's like, "I just quit my job, and I think you should hire me." And I was like, okay, direct and to the point. And he tells me why, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, all right, boom, I'm sold. Very bold approach. I already liked your hustle before this, because when you were hustling to try to get me as your customer, I was like, this guy's good. So, okay, let's do this. And I made him a job offer, which was not like, a Silicon Valley job offer, but the guy lives in San Francisco. He was working for a Silicon Valley startup. So he was like, oh, dude, that's like a 50% pay cut. And I was like, and I didn't say this out loud, but in my head, what I felt, I told him, I was like, that's what I can afford to pay right now. And like, look, you come crush it. The sky's the limit, but like, that's what I can pay you right now. Sight unseen. And I said, and in my head, I was about to tell him the line that I had heard from Warren Buffett. You guys probably heard the story, but when Warren Buffett goes and tries to work for his, kind of hero or whatever, Ben Graham, and he's like, I'll work for you for free. And Ben Graham goes, "Your price is too high, sir," which is the truth, which is the idea that you got to shadow Ben Graham and work side by side with him every day. Was you should be paying for that if you really want to be like a successful investor. That's how I felt. And I didn't want to say it because it's kind of arrogant, but it's like, dude, if I take you under my wing, my team is like 3 people. If you become one of those 3 and you're working out of he came over to my house yesterday, you're sitting by me working out of, side by side every day. Like really, I'm providing more value to you than you are providing to me at that point. And like, there's still I appreciate the value you bring, but let's like the dollar amount is the salary dollar amount is not the value you're getting. And I think he knows that intuitively, and that's why he said yes. But like that Ben Graham story always stands out to me. No, he's a young guy, just graduated from college.
But here's the thing. I think people, couple of thoughts on that. One is the salary / compensation is just one vector of value that you get from a company that you join, right? Another one that you get is you get the learning, whatever it is that they expose you to. Another one that you get is a network that you build while you're there, right? So there's all these other things that also in aggregate, and maybe, and I think it's common for people to over-index on the compensation or the kind of current compensation and under-index on other things that, and then there's just the raw emotional value. Do you like being around the people that you're around? Do you enjoy the idea that you're working on? Like, is it, those things matter, as it turns out.